Scotland is an ancient and mystical country. Its lands and lochs are filled with tales of strange creatures or spirits, beings like the Daoine, also known as the Old Gods or the Fair Folk, who are said to exist in another world found beneath the mounds and hills of Scotland, or the often malevolent forces of evil spirits like the kelpie, the fuath, or the Redcap. These creatures were all well documented in old Scottish lore books. Each have very specific characteristics, and in many cases there are actions one can take to prevent themselves from falling foul of the spirits. Yet not all evils of the land were so well documented, and if you don't mind my saying so, it is the unknown that binds our senses with anxiety and contorts our mind with a near infinite fear. The Black Walker of the Ford. Many years ago, in the land of Ranach, there lived a miller who was very much addicted to the use of tobacco. And like most smokers, the miller was prone to anger and quick in temper when lacking his particular drug of choice. It transpired that on one day, near the beginning of spring, the poor miller had completely ran dry of tobacco. But not all was lost, as that very afternoon he met a group of lochaber men who were passing through Ranach on their way to Perth, and sent with them an order for more tobacco, which they would deliver upon their return. On one night, some days later, as the miller had just arrived home, he heard what sounded like footsteps some distance behind him. There was only one ford for the mill stream, collection of small stepping stones, which lay not far from the miller's house. In sudden hope that the sound behind him was the lochaber men returning, the miller called, "Who's there?" with an air of excitement in his voice. But there came no reply. Again he called out, and again no sound returned. The severe lack of nicotine now made itself apparent in the man, as he screamed with a sudden anger, "Whether you're man or devil, I'll make you answer." An eerie, somewhat inhuman voice returned, "I am the Black Walker of the Ford." What further transpired upon that fateful night, we do not know, but each and every evening since, the miller would leave his home just after dusk, cross the river, and travel to a forested area near half a mile away. Once there, great cries, screams, and shouts could be heard, echoing throughout the local countryside, as if there was some great battle afoot. Before daybreak, the miller would return, tattered and bruised, with his dark dripping blood. Then, as the light of a new morning hit both the man and the blade, the red viscous blood would turn to dirt and fall from the long dagger. This wild tale of the miller and the Black Walker quickly spread throughout the land of Ranach, and many young would-be heroes journeyed to the ford to do battle with the Walker, but no being or creature would ever appear. On one night in particular, a group of men from the area decided to follow the miller to see what occurred, but as if the man had been granted the second sight, the miller quickly learned of this plan and confronted the men. He warned them not to follow him. It was enough that he himself had to go, never mind placing any more souls in peril. The men heeded the warning and never again tried to follow the miller. This nightly battle would continue for many years. Each night the man would leave, and each morning he would return with his blood-drenched blade. But all of this would come to a head on one wintry night. As always, the man would exit the mill house, cross the stones, and make his way to the forested area. Yet this night would be different from all the others, as this night would be the last. The cacophony of horrifying shrieks and screams, which were emitted from the wood that night, far outdid any other. People from all the neighbouring villages were harshly awoken. Many ran to windows and doors to listen to the titanic battle occurring in the woods. On the next morning, the miller returned, covered head to toe in thick red blood, which, like always, would turn to dirt. He told the gathered villagers that the fighting was over, and never would he speak of it again. That day, some local men went to the forest and found two very distinctive sets of footprints, arrayed as if the two beings had been engaged in a powerful struggle. The prints sank deep into the mud and snow. One set definitely the miller's, but the other was strange. The prints were less like feet and more like stumps. And most worrying of all, they did not leave or enter the woodland like those of the miller. This has been the unnerving tale of the Black Walker of the Ford, a chilling reminder to us all that many unknown entities still exist in the dark parts of the world. Thank you for listening, and a special thank you to all my patrons who help me keep these tales alive. I truly couldn't do this without their support. I am not even sure where to begin with the appendices to this tale. It is all such an enamouring mystery. The Black Walker of the Ford is really only mentioned in this one specific source, that being John Grigerson Campbell's Witchcraft and the Second Sight in the Highlands and Islands. I have hunted high and low trying to find other references to this creature or this particular tale, but all to no avail. It is perhaps what is left out in this story that makes it so interesting. What was the creature? How was it bested? What took place at the ford? And did the miller ever receive his tobacco? These questions have plagued my research of this tale, and I'm here to say that I simply do not have any concrete answers. What I do know is that this tale displays some common folklore tropes for Scotland. Yet the entity does not seem to line up with any familiar creature from Scottish lore, like bodachs or bogles, urisks, the hushka or the vua. Gregerson Campbell calls the creature a hobgoblin, but then states that this is a term used for unknown or unclassifiable otherworldly entities which are seen at night and taken to be supernatural. Since the information surrounding this tale seems to be so sparse, there are many suggestions as to what might have happened and who or what the entity was. Campbell himself tells that some years after these events, a man who had been in the Americas returned to the area and entered the mill, to find the miller dressing a millstone. The miller, in a fit of rage, threw the stone-shaping pick at the man and told him never to appear in his presence again. It was thought by some that this man may have been the miller's quarrel, and it was they that had fought each night, and the story had been somewhat elaborated by local rumours. Others have suggested that the whole affair may have been some form of delusion brought on by the miller's lack of tobacco, which sounds very absurd to me, although it did make me think that this story could be some form of wonderful allegory for stopping smoking. As an ex-smoker myself, I can definitely sympathise with the miller and his daily fighting of a beast for many years, as I am sure most addicts can. Locals from the area have at different times suggested the miller met the devil or a demon on that night, ran foul of the she or some other spirit. The mere fact that the entity was encountered by the water would suggest that it could be any manner of Scotland's various malevolent water spirits. But still, its nature seems so unique that I would not be willing to categorise it. Whatever or whomever the Black Walker of the Ford was, or for that matter still is, seems to be a complete mystery. If anyone knows of more information on the subject, or knows of similar creatures in folklore and mythology from other areas or countries,
I would love if you could let me know in the comments. And I'll see you all again next time for more tales of Scottish folklore. Slàinte mhath.